Over half of employees do not feel comfortable sharing their ideas with their boss because the very people that you're bringing into your organization don't even feel comfortable to share their good ideas to bring your company to the next level. So, why does open communication matter? Communication seems like such a simple thing, but think about welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to talk about open communication in the workplace. Did you guys know that 60%, over half of employees, do not feel comfortable sharing their ideas with their boss? Think about all the time that's being wasted. Think about all the money that's being wasted because the very people that you're bringing into your organization don't even feel comfortable to share their good ideas to bring your company to the next level. Let's get into it. So, why does open communication matter? Well, if you don't have the ability to communicate with the very people that you're bringing on your team so your company can be successful, then what are you going to get? I mean, ultimately, you want to be able to be in business to make money and have a good culture and ultimately achieve the end goals that you want to. And one of the things that I think that we all miss here is that communication seems like such a simple thing, but think about what the ramifications of poor communication is, right? It's going to hit your employee morale. If people don't feel comfortable enough to share their ideas or communicate, whether it's with their leadership, whether with it's their team, one another, then what are you going to get in the form of morale? Like people aren't going to be very excited to come to work. They're not going to be excited to be working on projects, and they're not ultimately going to be excited about working and doing their job. Think about the productivity that's being lost. You want to be able to have good productivity in innovation. You want to foster an environment of collaboration. You want people to be able to share their ideas. You want them to be able to problem solve. When we run into issues, you don't want people just to close up into their shell and not be able to tell, whomever that, this is wrong and I need your help because they don't feel comfortable, talking to one another. I mean, the key to success always is going to be the strong relationships and the strong bonds that you're going to be able to formulate in your own team. Because if you emphasize communication, then it's going to build trust, it's going to build rapport, and ultimately it's going to build the strong foundation that your company is going to need to go to the next level. So let's talk a little bit about some strategies in fostering good communication. Number one, you have to lead by example. If you expect people to communicate effectively, you need to be an effective communicator. And if you don't know how to talk to people, then you better learn how. Find training, get coaching, do whatever it is to make yourself a better communicator because ultimately people are going to be looking at you on whether or not you're going to make that effort. And if you make that effort, they'll make that effort. Create safe spaces. So make sure that you overly emphasize, and I mean overly emphasize, that people are able to share their ideas. They're able to push back on ideas that they don't agree with. Everything doesn't have to be so black and white. You want people to be able to talk through some of these things. So you need to make sure that ultimately that you're providing some level of an environment and an expectation that people can feel free to share the ideas, push back, communicate, talk back and forth. It doesn't always have to be super perfect, but the more and more you do it, the more that people are going to feel comfortable to communicate their ideas, push back on things they don't agree with, and ultimately, get those ideas refined so you can execute. And who knows? Who knows what you're going to be able to accomplish when your whole team feels comfortable enough to be able to give input, give pushback, and just go to the next level. I mean, think about some of the most successful companies in the world, like Apple. I mean, they expect people to speak up, talk about their ideas, and refine that idea and ultimately execute it. So, the other thing that you should do, number two, is regular feedback mechanisms. So, what does that mean? So, formal, right? Performance reviews, something more official, but also informal check-ins. There's nothing wrong with you checking in on a project or with someone, talking with them, seeing how things are going, seeing how they're, working through some of their challenges and ask them what's going on because people value that because it shows that you care and you might be able to give a little bit of input to help them get to that next stage of whatever that roadblock is so they can push through it and ultimately get to where they want to go. And number three, embrace different communication styles. People communicate differently. They always have. Some people are better at talking. Some people are better at email or writing. Some people need a little bit of time to answer. They don't like to be, put on the spot. Sometimes they need a little time to marinate on the very thing that you're trying to talk about. So in order to be successful at this, you have to be able to understand that whomever you're talking with may have a different communication style than you prefer. But being able to lead by example, back to number one, and being able to recognize that and overcome that is going to give you the success in your organization and make your team feel comfortable. Because when they feel comfortable in the way that you're communicating to them, they're going to feel comfortable communicating back to you. You need to overcome barriers. And one of the biggest barriers that I find is fear and mistrust. And that is a cultural thing. And that usually happens going back to people not feeling comfortable. But if people are getting shot down or people don't have the comfort that they have the time to be able to, formulate their thought and you're just rushing them and you're just moving on, believe me, all they're going to do is shut down. So you want to make sure that if there is that barrier, in your culture, in your organization, that you do something about it. And that's going to go through the last thing I want to talk about, and that's training. So if you have the ability to, implement good training that's going to give your team that level of insight, to be able to work through some of these things, and you're willing to dedicate that time and those resources, to your team to be able to get better at this, then you're going to see a huge difference in productivity, innovation, and ultimately the results that you're going to get. So it's worth the investment. You're going to be able to track this as you go along and know that in the end, that if you can get this dialed in your organization, you're going to be really successful. If you found this episode helpful, I encourage you to share it to somebody who needs to hear it. Subscribe, and you can find us on YouTube at HeyCharlesBiz, HeyCharles77 on Instagram, and Charles Ernst on LinkedIn. Drop a comment if you have any feedback, because I'm open to your communication. See you next time.